help walk us through this just a little bit. Is there a statutory process that gives authority to utilize a special grand jury to advise a DA or to essentially accumulate evidence for a DA to determine whether or not to indict?
Right. So the first question was about whether this happens throughout the state or not. I did do open records to every single district attorney in the entire state of Georgia to find out, because I wanted to know, I knew based on my practice that it was a very rare process, but I wanted to know, I wanted the data. I wanted to actually see it. So we did an open records for every single district attorney. We have received responses from almost all of them. There's only a couple that we haven't, but I don't know that those would be big factors. The few that were remaining, I think it was Augusta that I haven't received one from. But I talked with two of the prosecutors in those districts. There's only two that actually use something that would be akin to this. And one of them said they haven't done it in years, but they have done it. And they paid between $40 and $40 an hour, which tends to be about the going rate for appointed counsel. It's between $40 and $60 an hour, I know, for appointed counsel in most counties. And then the other county that did use them, they use a part-time solicitor. And that DA said every time that they would have maybe some overflow work, an appeal or something that they had extra work to do, they would hire this part-time solicitor. So it was someone who was already a government employee, and they would pay $45 an hour for this person to do work. So those are the only people. This is a very unique to Fulton County, which I assumed, but I didn't know until I did the research. Nobody does this but Fulton County. And the AG's office does it, and so we got a lot of arguments from the state about, well, the Attorney General's office does it, but that's a whole different statute. It's not even the same section. So the Attorney General is authorized because they represent all of the state agencies. They are authorized to hire outside counsel, and they have to because there's a lot of conflict issues, and so it makes sense. So you've got different needs for hiring outside counsel. You've got conflicts, if there's a conflict, and if there's a conflict, you'd have to hire someone who's outside of the office. You couldn't hire someone like in this case, like Mr. Wade, to be special counsel because they're in the office. So you can't, when you have a legal conflict, you have to have, the offices have to be separate. So with the AG, that's usually what happens. Sometimes it's specialized knowledge. I mean, you've got people who are representing commissioners. You've got people who are representing, people in certain agencies in the state, in certain types of power. And so it might be a specialized practice area. So the Attorney General is authorized, and they actually publish it on their website, all of the rates. It's very transparent. So I went through and looked at everybody's rate. I mean, it's very transparent. How much they pay, it's based on experience. They get approval for that. They get approval for the appropriations for it, and it's just extremely transparent, which is in direct contradiction to how it works in Fulton County.
And do you know how many judicial districts we have in Georgia? I don't.
I do not. I could look at my open records request. So the judicial districts, there would be a district attorney for each of those, and so those are who I sent all of those.
It's over 50.
It's over 50. I think it's 59, but I'm not positive.
That's what I think.
I think it's 59.
So out of those 59, you reached out to all of them to see if their district attorney's offices for each judicial circuit ever utilized a special assistant, outside counsel.
Yes.
Okay. And out of those, only 3 of them have ever done it?
Only 2.
Only 2.
Only 2 had ever done
Fulton
it.
County is one of them.
Only 2. Yes. I'm sorry. It's 3 counting Fulton County. Okay. I did not send an open records to Fulton County on that because I already knew that they did it.
Is there a statute that authorizes that?
There is a statute, and I cite it, if I may. I cite it in my brief.
Feel free.
Okay. Thank you. I don't want to misquote it. Let's see. So it's 15-80-20. And how I came to learn that is I actually contacted the prosecuting attorney's counsel early on in this case, and because I was trying to figure out the legality of this. I did open records, and I found out how much money the special counsels in this case were being paid. And there's about 20 different people in Fulton County that are paid under this type of arrangement. It's the largest personnel budget item in the DA's office.
Why wouldn't you just hire more assistant DAs and have them in-house?
That's what I didn't understand, and that's what, I mean, in my opinion, obviously, I think that's what should happen. But the reason that it wouldn't happen is because if you're hired as an assistant DA, you can't take private work. So the statutes, and they're all in section 1518, 15-18, the one that gives the authority for this is 20. But all of those, if you read all of them, it makes it very clear that if you're going to hire more assistant DAs, they have to be paid the statutory rate. So you can't just pay an assistant DA anything you want. You could not pay them $300,000, something like that.
What is that statutory rate?
I don't know it off the top of my head, but it is in the statute. I know that, like, District Attorney Willis, for example, I think it's around $200,000, and that's one of the top paid people. So most of the people are paid, somewhere between $100,000 and $150,000, something like that, depending on their role, depending on county supplements. So what the statute says is it gives a state salary, and then you can get a county supplement. But all of that is around that range. I'd say around $150,000. But there's limitations. So to answer your question, why you wouldn't just hire an assistant district attorney, first, they couldn't make as much money as independent counsels, or I'm sorry, not independent, special counsels, couldn't make that much money, but they also would be limited in their law practice. They wouldn't be able to have private practice, and that's by statute. So if you are hired as an assistant DA, you cannot have a private law practice also.
Do you know how many there are in Fulton County DA's office?
How many special prosecutors?
No, how many assistant district attorneys?
No, I actually opened records that, and it was declined. So we actually have a pending open records lawsuit, which I did bring. I asked for that. I asked for how many were hired, when they were fired, and they declined to give me that under the Open Records Act. So we ended up filing a lawsuit, and that's still pending.
Because it just occurs to me, I think there's certainly dozens of them.
Yes.
Maybe 100.
I think 100 would be a fair example, or a fair number based on just my knowledge of it. But there's quite a few, and if you had a certain amount of money that they spend several $1 million on these special prosecutors, that could be spent on a lot more assistant district attorneys.